Train, 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 train lover 16. The train, for its size, is the fastest vehicle on land. And the locomotives of Redcliff Loco Yard are the power behind the stations, industries and train lines that make up the well-renowned Redcliff and Guineabridge Railway. This is Redcliff Railway Tales.
Dora the Class 90 was really enjoying her new life on the Redcliff and Guineabridge Railway. She'd attempted to escape to the R&GR out of fear of being scrapped, but had damaged her pantograph on the way. Luckily, Ethan found her and brought her the rest of the way. After some minor modifications to allow her to run without the need for overhead power lines, she was now in service, and mostly running freight trains, but also passenger trains on occasion. She'd also brought a crane with her to the railway, who was already slated for scrapping. Her name was Caitlin, and she was now helping the railway's permanent way department with the track and station maintenance work, alongside Colin. Unfortunately, while Dora had very quickly made friends with everyone on the railway, Colin and Caitlin were not getting along. This was mainly because Caitlin was not adjusting to her new work fast enough for Colin's liking, and he felt she was causing more setbacks than progress. One weekend, Emma had brought the cranes to Rerailing City Station to replace part of the station's roof, as well as half a mile of track west of the station, but things were not going that smoothly. That's it, Caitlin. Just a little further over and...
Whoops.
Oh, bloody hell, Caitlin!
Sorry, I've never lifted anything this heavy before.
Never lifted anything this... That container is nothing, Caitlin. I've lifted things 50% heavier than that before without problems.
Lay off, Colin. She's doing her best.
Oh, I know, Emma. I just wish she'd developed some stamina a bit faster.
I understand and respect that, Colin. But some people take time to adapt to new working environments. You just need to be patient with her.
I've tried to be patient, but she's been working on this railway for 3 weeks now. I thought she would have adapted by now.
Well, my advice is not to get aggressive and hateful towards her. In my experience, getting aggressive and hateful with people you're not that fond of always ends in disaster.
Don't worry, Emma. I won't execute any nasty plans against her that result in the Eric building getting destroyed.
You had to remind me of that, didn't you?
While the Rerailing City line was closed that weekend, passenger trains were terminating at Knutford Airport and being worked as a push-pull service. As Dora had a great deal of experience working push-pull trains on the Great Eastern Main Line, she was mainly running this service. But while she was in her comfort zone doing this, something to note about Dora is that she was a very anxious and paranoid engine. Yes, it may have been reasonable for her to worry about being scrapped, but she also always worried about very trivial things, and was very frequently teased by the wagons for this, only worsening her anxiety. Luckily, it hadn't been hard for her to make friends, so there was always someone to share her worries with. Freddie was her best friend, so she most often shared her worries with him. Afternoon, Dora. Now, what things might be troubling you today?
Quite a few things, I'm afraid. I don't think I took on enough electricity today, and my traction motors don't sound too healthy. And on my outward journey, I thought I heard creaking sounds coming from my rear coupling. And to top that all off, I especially can't stop thinking about the wagons always teasing me about my anxiety.
Oh dear, I'm so sorry to hear all that. The wagons on this railway are just some of the worst behaved in the country, I'm afraid. You need to be very firm with them and take no crap from them whatsoever.
I know, Freddie, but as I've told you before, I'm terrible at standing up to others. Plus, I don't have anywhere near as much experience handling freight trains as I do with passenger trains.
Don't worry, Dora. I'd be delighted to train you in both of those things.
Thank you, Freddie. How do you suggest I start?
Start by simply not letting what the wagons say about you make you feel bad. Distract yourself from their words.
And how do you suggest I do that?
Maybe focus on and think deeply about the scenery you pass. That's often relaxing.
Okay, I'll try that over the next few days. Thanks again, Freddie.
You're more than welcome, Dora. A few days later, the Raiden City line had reopened and Freddie was taking a steel train to Redcliff, but he was suffering from engine trouble that day. He kept on coughing out very thick black smoke from his exhaust. And when he pulled into the rolling stock yard, he coughed so hard it caused him to violently lurch to a stop. Ouch! Oi! Watch it with the braking, idiot! Oi! That wasn't my fault! I am ill today, so don't you dare call me an idiot! No engine speaks to us like that! Just you wait! We'll get even! Dora heard all this noise and came to see what was going on.
Oh dear, Freddie, you look awful.
I am, Dora. I've never had engine trouble like this before.
Oh, don't worry. I'd be happy to take your next train for you.
Are you sure? Given what you've told me about the wagons always teasing you about your anxiety, I don't really want you taking freight trains not officially assigned to you.
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure. You're clearly in no state to work. Go back to your siding now, get yourself inspected, and most importantly, rest up.
Oh, thank you, Dora. Just please be careful for me, and remember my advice, will you?
I will, and you're welcome.
The steel was unloaded, and Brian shunted 2 more wagons onto the back of the train. Then Freddie went off to rest, while Dora collected the train and set off for Guineabridge Junction. But the wagons were still cross. We can't get even with Freddie now, so let's push Dora down the Bexgate flyover instead. One engine's as good as another. Dora was following Freddie's advice and not paying any attention to them. It might have been better if she had. Her train was loaded at Guineabridge Junction, and she set off back towards Redcliff via the Bexgate flyover. The wagons moved surprisingly smoothly up the flyover, but then suddenly, as they crested the top, Dora felt them push forward. Her brakes were useless against the surging wagons. She fought as hard as she could, but they kept forcing her on and on down the line. Her conductor warned ahead to Redcliff, and warning detonators were placed on the track ahead of the loco yard to warn VTES. VTES ran over them and made an emergency stop just in front of the points into the loco yard, avoiding a collision with Dora. Sacre bleu, mademoiselle! At last, the wagons were growing tired.
I'm winning! You're not going to run me off the tracks today.
But she was wrong. As she hit the buffers at the end of the sidings, they caught underneath her front coupling and lifted her cab over wheels onto her side. The wagons, now uncoupled from her, rolled to a stop next to her, laughing at her and singing a mocking song. Dora is no use at all, she's the biggest pansy ever. Thinks she can be strong and brave, that's the best joke ever. When Freddie is by her side, she thinks she's high and mighty. But when the buffers lift her up, thought goes to plus 90. All the confidence that Freddie had helped Dora to build suddenly and totally left her. Emma soon brought Colin and Catlin to rerail Dora.
All right, you two. I don't want you getting into a fight this time. You're going to need to cooperate if Dora is going to get back on the rails.
Okay, but Catlin needs to be on the same level as me if we're going to cooperate. So can I please show her how to lift engines first?
I suppose so.
Excellent! Alright, Catlin, watch and learn.
All right, I'm watching.
Colin swung his arm outwards and hooked it onto one of Dora's roof railings. Then he pivoted his arm upwards, and with the help of Emma pulling him backwards, they managed to lift Dora upright again. You see, Catlin? Nothing to it.
Great demonstration, Colin. But isn't the harder part of this operation coming now? The part where we actually have to put Dora back on the rails?
Yeah, but now that you've seen how it's done, we'll have no trouble doing that, right?
I guess so.
Good. Please move Catlin into position, Emma. Once she was in position, Catlin rotated herself towards Dora and hooked her arm onto a roof railing on Dora's other side. With Dora's weight evenly balanced between the cranes, they were ready to lift her.
All right, you two. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, lift.
As the cranes lifted Dora upwards, it seemed as though the operation was going to go smoothly. Then it happened. Colin turned Dora one way, and Catlin turned her the other. The strain became too great, the handrails Colin and Catlin were lifting Dora by broke, and she fell back down to the ground and onto her side again. Worse still, the impact caused one of her bogies to break off of her undercarriage.
I'm so sorry about this, Dora. No need to apologize, Emma. This wasn't your fault.
No, Dora, it wasn't. This was Catlin's fault. She should have turned you in the same direction as me.
Sorry, Colin. I thought the direction I turned her was correct. I've never lifted entire engines before.
Never lifted this, never lifted that. I'm sick of you using that excuse. Come here, you! Colin aggressively swung his arm towards Catlin before swinging it back into her cable. His hook caught on it with such force that it wrapped around his arm several times over. Colin and Catlin were stuck together.
Well done, Colin. Now I'm going to have to wait even longer to get back on the rails.
Oh dear. Workwomen came to untangle Catlin's cable, as well as Mr. Eric, who was not at all happy with Colin. I am incredibly disappointed in you, Colin. I thought you knew better than to lash out at others like you've been doing with Catlin pretty much since she arrived here, and now you've taken it much too far. Sorry, sir. She's just been building up my frustration so much since she got here. I just released it all without thinking. I do wish me and her could get along. I'm just not sure how to not get frustrated at her. I'd like to help you figure that out, but I don't have any ideas myself.
Well, I think I do, sir. Colin could do something similar to what Freddie's doing with Dora and train me to become more skilled in station maintenance and accident and emergency response.
Hey, you know, I was just now beginning to think that. Now that is interesting. Great cranes think alike, I suppose. With Colin guiding Catlin through the re-railing operation, the crane soon put Dora upright once again, before finally lifting her back onto the rails. Thank God for that! Well done, Catlin, and thank you.
I never thought I'd hear you say those words, Colin, so thank you too. I guess I should also thank you both. You did re-rail me after all. You're welcome, Dora.
Just then, Freddie, now with his engine trouble resolved, came to take away the wagons that had remained on the rails.
Hey, Freddie, you feeling better now?
Completely, Dora. And now, I think it's about time I do what I should have done when you first told me about the trouble these wagons have been giving you, and teach them a thing or two about respecting you.
Thanks. That would make my training much, much easier.
It would make training you much easier for me too. See you in a minute, Dora. Freddie pulled the wagons away, intentionally roughly. Ow! Oh dear! Ow! Stop it! Then stop verbally abusing me and mentally abusing Dora. As Colin and Catlin worked to re-rail the front wagon, Dora was jacked up so she could have her front bogie fixed back onto her. Half an hour later, Freddie came back to see Dora. The wagons won't be giving you trouble anymore.
I should think so too. Thanks again.
You're welcome. May I just say how delighted I am with all of you today. You've all given each other significant development. Just then, a call came through on Mr. Eric's radio. Yes, Carl? Alright, I'll be back up to the station at once. See you in a minute.
What does Carl need to speak to you about, sir?
Ah, that, Dora, is a surprise. But you'll find out very soon. I must be on my way now. See you later, everyone. Mr. Eric headed back up to the station. Following these events, Freddie continued to train Dora in handling freight trains and dealing with her anxiety. He ended up training her so well that she soon hardly suffered from anxiety at all and became the railway's bravest engine. She soon began to train Colin and Catlin in working together herself, and thanks to this, the three soon became greater friends than ever before. This, as well as Dora's newfound bravery, inspired her to become the railway's primary rescue engine. She learned to read Morse code and was fitted with a Morse code receiver, enabling her to respond to accident and emergency calls with the cranes within minutes. Now, you're probably wondering what Carl called Mr. Eric to speak to him about. Well, my dear friends, that is a story for another day.